Come on in, close the door. The time is now. Welcome to Project Woman TV with myself, Abby Adams. You've got the wonderful Faye, who is on my screen to my right, and the gorgeous Rebekah Brown, who is the foundation. She's like the roots
underneath
of our tree. So welcome, and hello, my gorgeous women. How are we doing? In fact, I'm gonna combine the how we doing with the song choice. So Rebekah, as you are the roots of our tree today, what's your song choice, love?
So I've got a random one because obviously I'm a little bit of a hippie, and I grew up in a family that was basically like the Von Trapps. So we were all in sort of folk bands. So I'm going to gift you the Littlest birds sing the prettiest songs by the Be Good Tanyas. It's a lovely song about escaping and how the smallest, most beautiful sounds are often the things that go off and make big things happen.
Oh, that's lovely.
I hear the word escape. Is that a representation of how we're feeling today, Rebekah? It's always there, isn't it?
It's Friday. I'm about to escape. The weekend is my escape.
Yes.
Love it. And you, Faye, what's the song choice, darling?
My song choice is an Elton John one. I'm a big Elton John fan.
Good old Elton. Love a bit of Elton.
And it's the one track, if it's played at a party, my friends know I'm in the middle of the dance floor. And it's Elton John, Are You Ready for Love?
Nice.
Oh, right. Is that what you're saying about today? Are you ready for some love today, Faye?
I am ready for love in my life.
Bring it in. Bring it in. So for me, I was thinking of a Luther Vandross tune, but then my hormones have had a huge shift. So yesterday, day 23, I start to spot, and all these emotions, especially that good girl, what have I done wrong? You know? Oh, and I sat last night and I just listening to her and unraveling her, and I'm doing a really beautiful course called The Deeper Body at the moment with a friend of mine, where it's all about rubbing the lymph, but he's taking me on this magical journey. And this morning, whilst I was doing these points and touching my body, we came to this finish, and I sat there and I went, thank you. And I just touched all these parts of me, and it's like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. You've not done anything wrong. You know, it's just all part and parcel of this change, of this story, right? Which brings me to my song, which is Nina Simone.
Oh.
I'm feeling good.
Love that. Yes.
Yeah. So that is where I'm at today. And I just feel all of these song choices, like, oh, when you listen to what you're saying, escape, love, new day, it's all in there, isn't it? We connect with that vibration and we bring it out. And that's why music means so much to me, and that it helps you make sense of stuff, doesn't it? When stuff doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I've always been a big fan of music. Always. Just growing up, we did, like, on the weekend, my mum would be playing the tunes as we're doing the housework. Yeah, I've always had music in my life. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, I feel blessed. And, you know, you say that, Rebekah, about your family being hippies and tuning into that vibe. I love it. I love it. Everyone's music reflects an element of their history, I suppose. The history and...
Totally.
Yeah.
You carry stuff with you, don't you? And you get gifted songs by people you meet along the way. No, I think it's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, Billy Bragg just came into my head then. Why wouldn't he?
See?
Why wouldn't he? Why wouldn't he? It's so good to be sitting here with you on this wonderful Friday now that it's stopped raining. Thank goodness. We're here to change. Is change the right word? We're here to reanimate. That's the word I'm looking for. Reanimate the conversation around women, female, the feminine, so that we don't keep bashing that masculine. That's the way I see it anyway. And what I wanted to see here, what me and Faye wanted to discuss, was how we have turned our, what would be perceived as a negative story into so my daughter's in the bath and she's now shouting at me that she's finished.
Yeah,
So
cool.
I'm going to go get her out. Before I do, I want to pass over to you, Rebekah, as you are the roots of our tree, and ask your story. Where did it start, and how has it shaped you? And on that note, I'll be back.
Okay. I kind of feel like I've shared my story quite a lot, actually, Faye, and I'm really curious to hear yours, because I think I think it's really interesting coming together and having this chat today. But I guess my story is that I got really sick during perimenopause. So I was a researcher, loving my job, had been doing it since university.
Wow.
Very happy with everything. And over a period of about 6 months, I got really, really sick. And the way that the early symptoms of perimenopause manifested themselves for me were anxiety, sleeplessness, brain fog. And I think because I was young, well, we now know not young, actually, I was in my early 40s, so bang on in terms of perimenopause. But I think because at the time, the perceptions were that menopause happened so much later, and arguably that's still the way that the world sees it. I went to my doctor, like about 75% of our community, and like 75% of our community, I was told that I was too young to be perimenopausal, and I was more likely to be depressed. I was offered antidepressants. I kind of knew that I wasn't depressed. And I think actually the thing that saved me was the fact that I am a researcher. So I'm very grateful for all of that training, because basically what I did is I left the doctor's surgery. I decided to try and work out what was wrong with me, because I wasn't confident in the information I was being given by medical practitioners was correct. And that sent me down a large rabbit hole for about 6 months. I did loads of research. I spoke with doctors. I spoke with, naturopaths, herbalists, acupuncturists. And the more I looked into it, the more it was apparent that actually all of my symptoms could be traced back to perimenopause. And that there was a huge amount I could do if someone had told me. And that's really where MPowder came from. So I kind of got better. I applied all of the things that I was learning. Some stuff worked for me, some stuff didn't. Which I think is really, really important to remember, because everyone's journey is so individual. But I started to get better, and I had to change quite a lot. I think looking back on it, I wasn't particularly good at paying attention to my own health, which many of us aren't, are we, at midlife? We have so many demands and calls on our attention. And up until that point, I'd kind of got away with it. And one of the practitioners we work with, actually, and a wonderful woman who does cold water therapy, and that was a big breakthrough for me, actually, was getting into a large ice bath in a field in pants. But one of the things she always says, one of the things she always says is, if you listen to your body when it whispers, it doesn't need to scream. And mine just needed to scream, because I was totally ignoring it. And that's kind of what happened. I got better. I decided that I didn't feel that I could just leave all of the stuff I learned, in my head. It felt really important to do something with it. And I tiptoed onto Instagram, really just to find out if other women were having similar experiences to me. And as a researcher, normally when you ask people for their feedback, you have to pay them, or you have to give them Amazon vouchers, or you have to put them in a focus room and feed them sandwiches. And what was really amazing was that I was just inundated with stories from women, and it was almost like they couldn't tell me enough, just like, and this helped and this didn't help, and if you need, it's so amazing. And that kind of generosity of spirit was the catalyst that started MPowder, because I thought, wow, actually when you talk to females, they kind of know, when we do know when we listen in, and we work stuff out. And if we could become more empowered about our own biology, there's absolutely no reason why this transition should feel so tough. I mean, it has ups and downs, as life does, but there's so much we can be doing. And so that's what happened. MPowder became this co-creation community. We started off with supplements, because women are really pissed off with the snake oil that tends to perpetuate the supplement space, and they wanted something that would just basically act as a foundation layer. And something that you could just slip into your morning routine and know that you've got that kind of nutritional foundation layer. And I think the fact is, there are no silver bullets. So what we find in our community, and I found, is that you have to layer up. So whether HRT is right for you, whether movement and exercise needs to be much more regular, and maybe you need to rethink what you're doing in the way that Abby talks about. But so I guess in a weird way, I was this human guinea pig that went through a pretty horrid time, but actually I'm really grateful for it, because I wouldn't be here now. And I kind of look back at my old job, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. But this isn't really a job. This is like a
more rewarding,
movement.
I get.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like you're, yeah. So yes, that's my little corner. That's my story.
Can I pick up on a word? And by the way,
Yes.
everyone, I didn't miss out on Rebekah's story because I know it off by heart. It's etched on mine.
I don't shut up about it. Yeah.
Not at all. It's because I just enjoy it. The word better. You kept saying about how you got better, and obviously yes, that's it. But when the way that I'm now looking at perimenopause as I come into it, and to allow myself to absorb these changes, is that it's a massive healing process whereby I can become greater than what I ever thought I could be, and that I've always been this great. And
I think it's a massive. It's a again. Henny Finley's another practitioner we work with, talks about sort of opening up that Pandora's box. And when I say better, I think we can acknowledge that some bits of us do make us really sick. But it's also about like stepping up into what you have the opportunity to be, I think. And there's so much wisdom we've got by this point, isn't there? And it's an opportunity to open that Pandora's box and kind of, like you say, Abby, heal and evolve and kind of work out what you want this next bit to be about, because it does feel like it's our time, doesn't it? There's that opportunity to do more and be more. As you say, you've always been great, Abby, but I think it is that everyone's waiting.
I'm owning it.
That compliment, like, yeah,
I own it. But I think that's true. It's like you have to. I think that's the other thing we need to do in midlife, is accept the compliments.
Yeah.
But do you know what? True. The reason why and this is why I love working with all humans. This is why I love working with women, because when I say I'm great, and I mean this, because I'm looking at you and I believe that you're great. And I'm not making this up. I absolutely believe it. And I love it when all of a sudden a woman has this, it's not even a breakthrough. It's like a crumbling of a suit that she's been wearing for such a long time that hasn't fit her. And now she realizes, oh my, this feels so comfortable. It's me.
It's very much as Rebekah said, sorry to interrupt, it's that evolving, it's that acceptance of ourselves, faults and all, and kind of rolling with it, where I think our younger selves very much took those faults on and kind of made it our armor, instead of just accepting this is who we are. Definitely who we are.
Tell me about you, because I want to hear about your story.
Well, Rebekah, it's really funny because I'd never heard your story before. So I was really pleased.
And we sat on a couch together. What happened?
I know, but she was doing the interviewing. She didn't tell the story.
Actually, I was just getting all the wisdom.
Understated all the time, Miss Rebekah. Miss Rebekah.
I love the way you said that. What's my story? Similar to you, Rebekah, at the beginning. It kind of all took me by surprise. For me, just started a brand new job, first week there, and I started having hot flushes, but I had no idea what they were. I just kept feeling this whoosh of heat repeatedly, and I was just kept thinking, what the hell is that? So first week, brand new job, supporting a CEO. So I was like, I don't know what's going on, but I'll just ignore it, as we do. And then I think it was in my second week, after it had happened quite a few times, I was like, I'm having hot flushes. But for me, I was 45 and I internally just burst out laughing, because I was like, what the heck? I'm 45. How am I having a hot flush? Nah, this isn't happening. I was still making bad life choices, believe it or not, going out, drinking, partying, doing whatever. Anyway, so that kind of was fine for the first year. I am very much holistic, Rebekah. Holistic natural remedies. Those are my go-to straight out the gate. So for me, I just took myself off to a health food shop, bought some vitamins. Actually, I said to the lady there, what do you recommend for menopause? Bless her, she must have been in her 20s. She was like,
Yes, hang on a minute.
yeah, bless her. So she went and looked it up in her book, and she was really helpful. She gave me magnesium, so I took those, and I kind of just suffered the hot sweats. They were kind of okay. The one thing I did do in that first year was change my commute, because I live in central London, and my journey took me out to Richmond each day, and I was getting on the tube at Old Street, central London. It was already packed. So I'm standing there, the hot flushes were kicking in. I started to panic, and I was like, I can't do this. It was just inhumane. So yes, so suffered it for a year, but then I suppose I call it the explosion, epiphany, whatever, is when my mum was diagnosed with terminal cancer. It's the second time she had cancer. The job I was doing, supporting the CEO, the business started to do negotiations to sell. So that was all confidential. None of the staff knew about it. So I had that pressure, which ramped up in work, and the fact I was going to lose my mum. My mum had me when she was 17, super, super, super close, spoke every day on the phone. It just sent me into a whirlwind, and I just crumbled. I wasn't coping. I actually started to see a counsellor before my mum passed away, because I was struggling to accept that she was going to die. So, and it was my counsellor that said to me one day, she goes, go and talk to your GP about how you're feeling. Because then my symptoms had started to ramp up: anxiety, brain fog, day sweats, night sweats, you name it, everything. And I think I marvel at myself how lucky I've been, because as you said, you went to your GP, you wanted to describe your antidepressants. I went to my GP, sat in the chair for about a minute crying before I could actually speak. When I told her, she went, sounds like you're perimenopausal. Let's get some blood tests. But in the meantime, let's give you some help. And off the gate, gave me HRT.
Amazing.
Straight away.
That's beautiful.
And over the years, as I've heard more and more women go, I couldn't get the help. They thought I was depressed. They wouldn't listen to me. And I'm just like, I've been so lucky. So lucky. Tablets didn't work. First ones were like, because I didn't know what to expect. I didn't know. No,
exactly. Yeah.
So I had to go through a couple of upping the doses, then changing to a different one. And eventually I kind of felt okay. But then those tablets got discontinued, and I got put onto patches, and I was like, oh, Eureka. Because I had something to compare it to. The patches were like, oh, I feel nearly normal. This is amazing.
Yeah.
But obviously all through that time, my mum died. And it was when my mum died that everything really kind of crashed and burned for me. I spent the year my mum died was my 50th birthday. She died in the January. My birthday was in the October. I had 4 weddings. And I look back now, and I spoke to my counsellor about it at the time, and I just said, I was just a functioning alcoholic that year.
Yeah.
I just drank my way through my grief. And the weddings were an excuse. My 50th was an excuse. I was just a functioning alcoholic. And I'd often say to my counsellor, I'm drinking a lot. Because I knew I was, but I wasn't about to stop. And she said to me, are you worried? And I was like, no. I just carried on drinking.
Turn up to the session with a bottle of wine. This is all good.
No, it wasn't that bad. But that's kind of how I got myself through it. And I think after the year my mum died is when I kind of started to kind of own who I was, look after myself more.
Did something trigger it? What made you sort of switch from that? I'm not worried, but I know I'm drinking way too much, and I'm basically a functioning alcoholic, to actually I need to kind of practice some self-care and stuff. Like what did anything happen, or did you just wake up and just think, you know what, this needs to change?
I think a couple of things happened. So my mum died in 2017, and 2018 is when I launched my 9 to 5 menopause, because I'd gone through that first year of grief, just kind of slightly self-destructing, but realized I think I wanted to get a handle on my menopause. I knew I wasn't feeling good. I knew I was drinking too much. I was staying out late. I was eating shit and stuff. And I kind of wanted to address it. And there were little things I'd started to do, like I changed my commute. I love fashion. I love clothing. I changed my clothing, my whole wardrobe. So I no longer wear anything synthetic because it just irritated me and exasperated my sweats. So my wardrobe is 99.9% cotton or linen, natural fibres. I like skincare and stuff. And I'm like, the reason I launched 9 to 5 was mainly because I cannot be the only bitch here having to commute to work, get up in the morning, deal with kids, go to work. And I'm thinking, where are these women? Where are they? Nobody was talking about menopause in the workplace. And that job, I was there for 5 years. And I never told a soul, apart from 1 or 2 close colleagues, that I was going through menopause.
Wow.
And there was a point in that job where my boss turned around to me and he said, "What is going on?" And I just couldn't tell him. And he then put it down to the fact that my mum was dying. He said, "This is because of your mum, isn't it?" I was like, okay, because I was all over the place, brain fog, you name it. I just wasn't with it. So I was just like, do you know what? Yeah, we'll assign it to that. And I think I was scared. I was scared of the perception, because the perception I had was old and over the hill. That's kind of the imagery that I'd been fed over the years, because I knew nothing about the menopause. So I kind of just thought, well, I can't say anything. They're going to think I'm over the hill. They're not going to consider me for promotion or capable of anything. So I just kept stum. But it was only from launching 9 to 5 and some of my colleagues at work found my account. That's how my colleagues knew, but no one in management or HR were told.
Faye, you know, you said about processing the grief. Do you feel that you actually processed that grief?
I did a couple of years later. So that first year, I drank my way through it. When the business eventually sold in 2019, I left and took 6 months off work because I hadn't had any space to grieve. My mum died. I was back in work a week later because it was pinnacle of the sale process. So I took a week off work.
Our culture, I mean, resonating from experience as well, drinking to numb out those emotions. I mean, as a kid, like I used alcohol and drugs to not deal with
stuff,
the emotions from childhood. And I used to drink till I blacked out. It weren't a good night unless I had filled my body, and I was a mess. But I didn't care. Just didn't want to feel anything. I didn't want a responsibility.
That's what I was like. And the year she died, I distinctly remember sitting on my sofa and just thinking to myself, I'm losing my mind. I actually thought I was losing my mind, to the point I Googled menopause and grief. And that's a whole new world entirely. I never realized how, because there's so many different forums out there and people talking about, it's because normally you get to a certain age, your parents are elderly, going into care or becoming sick and stuff. So it's around that time that you are losing loved ones, and coinciding with your menopause, it was like.
Do you think your menopause was the catalyst to help you process that grief?
I don't know. I think being able to take 6 months off work was the best thing I could have done for myself. Was the best thing I could have done. I think my mum died definitely gave me a effort attitude of life is too short. And I wanted to get out there and live my life and be happier than what I had been for the past 2-3 years prior. That's what it did. It gave me that I wanted to be happy. I didn't want this sad, miserable feeling anymore.
I think that's the calling, right? That's that calling for like perimenopause, menopause. That is the whisper that you were speaking about, Rebekah. You've got to be able to hear it. It feels uncomfortable at first. It feels like things are annoying and frustrating and everything else around you has an issue other than you, but actually it's that whisper that's telling you there's more out there.
Yeah.
This isn't just it. You've just got to have the confidence and trust opening that door to let that fresh air in.
It's tough, because I had some really dark points in my life, really dark, that could easily have just ended badly for me, really badly. And I won't lie, and I openly discuss this now, that at the point my mum died and my grief was so bad, I was speaking to my counsellor, and the conversation I had with her was along the lines of, I'm not in a good place here. I'm really not in a good place. And she said, I'd like you to go to your GP and just explain how you're feeling. And they gave me antidepressants for 6 months because I just wasn't able to cope with the grief and the menopause. And when you say, like, GPs give women, oh, you're just depressed, that's wrong. But at that point in my life, I needed it. I definitely needed it.
And I mean, it's fascinating, isn't it? We know now, and that's such, you've done such an amazing thing, Faye, just say that first. But we know now that our hormones respond to external stress, and that actually in menopause, we're less able to deal with external stresses. And it sounds very black and white to describe that huge grief as a stressor in a scientific term, but we just don't have the resilience in us often, and that's why it's so much harder, because it does happen at that time, like you say, when there's often grief for all kinds of things. You may have lost someone you love because you're at that age, or you may be grieving the loss of who you felt you were, or what you associated with like you were saying about the workplace, the kind of the fear that you will be perceived to be something other than yourself just because you're biochemically going through a totally natural life stage that we all go through, and yet we can't talk about it because we fear that people are going to see us differently. So there's so much grief, I think, for people, and knowing that biochemically something happens as well, I think is sometimes quite useful, because that's why medication can be really helpful. But to your point, Abby, as well, that kind of that ability to allow yourself to process stuff is a hard lesson to learn, isn't it? Because I think until midlife, it's not something we've necessarily done. I certainly hadn't done until I got to this age.
Well, do you know what I wanted to pick up on when you speak about women and yourselves that went to the doctor and you get told that you're depressed? If that's all that you know, that's what you're going to believe, aren't you?
Yeah.
Oh, I went to a trusted figure and they told me that I'm depressed. This is what depression feels like. Okay, I trust you. I'm going to do this. But this is where it's, this is what menstrual cycle tracking, but that's such a rank word for something so beautiful, has taught me, because what I realize is that having a period really is the preparation for menopause. All of these feelings that arise, they arise throughout your cycle every single month, and one of those is the menopausal feeling, that wintering, Rebekah, that we spoke about before we jumped on. It's all there, and it's a feeling. What are you going to do with it? What do you do with it? And that's when your choices come in. But if your choices are limited, you're limited in what you can do with them. And so again, the processing part becomes a lot harder because you've got a very small funnel for which you pass through instead of having perhaps many,
It's because, I think for our generation now talking about it, but I had no idea what the menopause was. I mean, the fact that I came to the conclusion I was having hot flushes was a miracle in itself, because I was just like, what's going on? But my mum never mentioned the word menopause. She'd say her period was late, or she'd say her period had come back after 2-3 months, but she never mentioned the word menopause. Never.
Yeah. I'm just going to, not wanting to distract us all, But my cat's trying to escape. I don't think it's that she's disinterested at all, but I'm just going to allow her to.
It's riveting. Tell her to stay.
No, basically, she's saying, I'm going through the menopause. I need to leave. I need some space.
I'm just gonna bring her over and so you can say goodbye.
Oh, bye.
Out you go.
Yes. No, I think it's very. I've become more liberated, and sometimes you hear people say, "Oh, when you get older, you care less about things. Like you're just more comfortable in your own skin." And I feel like I still critique myself quite a lot, but I am definitely more comfortable, and I own my decisions more. I kind of, and I'm happy with those decisions, and I'm learning that I'm number one.
Yes,
and
you are.
I have to make myself number one. I do, because you can't really go out into the world and support others or find, because I'm still single, I'm still searching for that Mr. Right, or that I'm still searching for Mr. They're never going to be Mr. Right. We've all got flaws.
We'll settle for Mr. Big.
Mr. Big, yeah, Mr. Big. We won't go there. I'll tell you a story another time about a young man
on the nighttime channel. On the night
that slid into my DMs a couple of weeks ago. Made me feel, this is good. But yeah, I just think you have to believe that you're number one. And don't get me wrong, this wasn't just like, oh, I'm just number one. It's taken a lot of therapy, a lot of acceptance of who I am, what my body's gone through, where I'm going, where I want to go, have goals and those dreams. Because for many years, I didn't think, there are many things I wanted to achieve that I didn't think I would. And yeah, I smile when I actually sit down and think about where I am now and who I am and what I'm doing, and wanting to, just spread a bit more positivity and just move with purpose. Abby, what you were saying earlier about women kind of supporting each other, I'm a big believer in that. Like, if I'm walking on the street and there's someone, a lady or a girl with a really nice outfit on, a nice dress, I make a point of saying, oh my God, I love your dress. I think you look really nice today. And you can just see their whole demeanor lift. Do you know what I mean? I'm thinking, I like that dress, and I'm going to tell her I like it. It's a positive thing.
Changes everything.
Love that.
Do you know when you were saying earlier about how I feel basically about filling yourself up to be able to give, and this is my point in that, you know, I've seen people that I love who don't look after themselves and constantly give, and it's so brittle. And I don't mean that nastily. It's so brittle because you can tell that they don't really want to do it. They don't really, because they haven't got the energy. And so what my point is that why would you want to give in that way when it's coming from a place of really lack, to be fair, when you could be coming from a place of absolute joy and strength? It changes the dynamics so much, doesn't it? And this is why, you know, creating that time for yourself. And I know that can feel like an impossible feat at times when there's so much going on. But what I appreciate now is like, what's important? What is important? And, you know, sitting down, it's lovely. It's nice every now and then when you sit down and you binge watch something. But from my point of view, again, I'm only numbing out from what I need to sit down and sort out, you know, and that is a conversation with my husband. At the moment, we're doing this course together. And do you know what? It's really changed the dynamics because we're sharing this time. We're learning something. We're listening to the most beautiful words that are being communicated. And I just appreciate him on another level, you know? And I had this realization when Carlos was saying about the way someone sees you is the way that you will respond to be that something.
Yeah.
So you're used to being something to someone. And me and Nick have always been, you know, we met when we was really young. We we've always been jokers. And in that moment, I looked at him and I touched him, but it was a completely different touch. And he reached out and he held me, and it was a completely different response. And it's creating those pockets of time that make me feel so good and so loved and so able. And again, like my children see this. It's an education to them how to communicate with others, with each other as siblings, you know? It's powerful. And when you invest in that time in yourself, you just see how that shifts everything around you.
Oh, you're evolving, Abby, I think is what's happening.
I feel like my hands are on my staff then, like Gandalf. Did you see that? Kind of rest. There is nothing there.
Lean on.
I think you'll see, because you're evolving, and it's good that your husband's evolving with you. You're kind of on a different journey now. And I think because you met when you were so young, you've kind of probably gone through different iterations and having the kids and everything else. So it's kind of, I don't know, I see this time in my life as a new chapter. This is now my next chapter. And it sounds like you and your family are going through this new chapter.
Whether you like it or not. Well, you would say that perimenopause was probably the catalyst as to why we left London to move to Devon, and they all came with me. Thank goodness, that was nice of them. But I said to Henny Flynn, I don't want to keep doing this stuff on my own now, because if I do, me and my husband won't be together. And there's been two major instances in our relationship where we could have separated. And it was all about my emotional stuff and how to contain it and to move through it. And I don't want that to happen. So now it is about us doing something like this together to keep moving forwards. Because deep in my heart, you know, even when those two circumstances occurred where we could have gone in separate directions, there was that whisper saying, no, you know, this is your soulmate, Abby. Don't let this go. Like, this is your stuff. Work on your stuff. And you know, that's when I went off in Thailand. I went and lived in Thailand, and then I went and lived in Miami. And it was those times, just that time apart, just to, I suppose, almost like breaking my body. That's not the right word, but moving my body past what it believed it was capable of to realize what it was really capable of. And that's when I found my period. You know, at the age of 34, I was like, sorry, this is actually what a period is. Like, this whole month of, you know, an amazing trek around my body, and no one's ever told me about it. Are you crazy? Where do I send my lawsuit? Because this is ridiculous. And it just changed everything. And again, you know, it's brought me here. Menstrual cycle health awareness, tracking, whatever you want to call it. It's brought me to the relationship I have with Rebekah, with you, Faye, you know, just really looking at what female feminine health is. Absolute game changer. And when people ask me this, you know, well, why do I need what's so important about my menstrual cycle? Everything. There's a massive chapter in your life that you don't know.
Yeah.
That you don't, there's a part of yourself that you don't even know. And you're trying to make decisions, life-affirming decisions, without that chapter in your book. This is why you keep stumbling. This is why it feels so... careful that I don't swear on YouTube. This is why it feels so hard. Put that chapter in, everything makes so much more sense. The story makes so much sense.
It's having that understanding. It's quite interesting, actually. I do weight training. That's one of the things I've embraced since the menopause, which I surprised myself because 20s, 30s, 40s, I was like, nah, you're all right. And then I hit my 50s and I'm like, I'm going to work out. But it's like, what happened there? And I've embraced it and I love it. But one of the things that really surprised me, and I think, and it needs to become more normalized, I was doing a session with my PT and I was just being really shit. I was just being really clumsy, And he'd said to me, where are you in your cycle? Are you on your period? And I was like, well, and he was like, this is going to have an effect on how you train. Some days are going to be better than others. And it just blew my mind that this male PT was questioning my cycle so I could understand how I would train better. And I loved it. I loved him for it. But it was really shocking to begin with. And it shouldn't have shocked me because it should be normalized. Like if I go into the supermarket and I see a man picking up sanitary items for obviously whoever, and I'm like, look at you buying your girlfriend or wife.
You want to hug them, don't you? You just want to go over and hug them.
Yeah,
I love you.
I love it. I actually secretly love it. And I'm like, oh, you're a good one.
But this is where it's changing, isn't it? These conversations are changing. I mean, I'm so pleased that the conversation around menopause is becoming more normal. But I always say we as humans are a fascinating bunch, aren't we? Because we always go to the end first. You know, what comes before that? Your period. You know, the period. Why are we not looking at that? But no conspiracy theory at all, but it always feels like we are constantly separated from each other. Like you're in your menstrual years, you go there, your perimenopause, you go there, your menopause, you go there, and then you've got these huge voids where the conversation is being missed, like that wisdom, you know, around the fires not being passed back. And this is where it's kind of going a little bit for me, because we need to be bringing all of these women together. It doesn't matter if you're menopausal and you're menstruating. There's so much there. You know,
and
so much to learn.
And so I was on a panel yesterday, and it was really interesting because it's a company that did some research, I think it was 2 years ago, called the Invisibility Report, which you guys might have seen, but they've just redone it. So 2,000 women in the UK, you know, sort of representative of society. And the stat that's shocked me the most is that people who consider the statement that menopause is a taboo topic has actually gone up in the last 2 years. So as the conversation has, because obviously you never know the becauses. So I've been pondering on it myself, but I think, you know, with my research head on, I wonder whether, although the conversation is happening more, and there's some other positive stats, like women are better able to identify more than 3 symptoms, which was all we were able to sort of identify a couple of years ago. We're a little bit more aware of some of the cognitive and sort of mental aspects of menopause. So things like that, all good. I wonder whether in kind of having the conversation and the way that the media has had to approach it, because they always have to look for clickbait, and so it has to be the most distressing stories, the most troubling kind of descriptions of what menopause is, that it's making a cohort of people feel incredibly uncomfortable about it. And, you know, these sort of well-meaning topics that are being sort of had in places, maybe females aren't, all of us aren't quite ready to have those chats in that open way yet. And it's making people more uncomfortable rather than less, which I thought was really, really interesting and really important when we think about how we communicate what you know, what is brilliant about our biology, to your point, Abby. So, you know, it's amazing that we have this menstrual cycle, and our biology is incredibly clever, and our hormones, you know, are capable of amazing things if we listen into them. But if you're not careful, all of these things are seen as inconveniences and hurdles and barriers and medicalized to a point that no one wants to experience menopause. It sounds horrible. And I just think that's really shocked me yesterday.
Do you know what, Rebekah? I mean, this just goes to prove, doesn't it? Before before you can apply any science protocols, and I'm talking about exercise, nutrition, supplements, blah, all of that, how do you feel about yourself? Because if you don't feel great about yourself, I mean, it's been scientifically proven now. My one of my teachers, Phil Richards, I've studied a lot with him, and your cells actually shut down the communication. And so if all they understand is that you don't like your body and you don't like yourself, joy, the receptor for joy begins to diminish. So it becomes harder for your body to feel it. I mean, how phenomenal is that? So when we have that as a foundation, we can start to see it doesn't matter how much exercise you do. It doesn't matter how much great food you're eating, because your body can't digest that nourishment. It can't take it in. It's
really
just, there's no point. Caroline Miss, I love the quote. She said, "You can eat as much spirulina as you like, but if you don't like yourself, you might as well be eating cat shit." Save a hell of a lot of money.
Yeah,
there is an element to that.
For me, before I sit down with anyone, and go, okay, so you want to work on your fitness and you want to work on this, yeah. How do you feel about yourself? Well, I don't like this and I don't like that and I don't like this. How on earth is anything ever going to change if you don't like it? It won't. It just won't. So we've got to work. We've got to focus on that first. Get a be able to feel how great you are, and then all of that stuff becomes way more easier. That's what my health has taught me.
I think for me, if I think back, I definitely had quite a lot of hang-ups and insecurities in my 20s and 30s. I also did the old, I was just convinced I was going to be a mum. So for me, not having that come to fruition, that was a whole, that was a big part of who I was meant to be. And I think I had to address that to kind of be where I am today. And I kind of addressed that before I started the perimenopause, which, thank God, or else I think it would have been 10 times as worse if I hadn't addressed the fact that I wasn't going to be a mum. Because it's something I very much wanted. I was convinced that, because I didn't realize the whole biology of having a child and how actually difficult it is to get pregnant. Like some people get pregnant at a drop of a hat, but because I've gone through IVF, I've done IUI, all that kind of stuff. And it was successful. And that realization, has kind of taught me a lot, taught me a vast amount.
And to carry that through. And I feel that's what a lot of women experience, is they don't deal with it and they end up carrying that through. And there's I keep referring back to Henny Flynn, the wonderful woman. That's that Pandora's box, at one point, and you're like, you've got to deal with it. And that, it feels as if it comes out of nowhere, doesn't it? I need to tell you this. I need to explain this. I need to get this off my chest. That's the whisper of perimenopause, I believe. And it's a wonderful opportunity. It really is. It's cathartic, isn't it? Why would you want to carry all that stuff from that time? Your menstruating years, your highly fertile years, that archetype of the virgin. It's so naive, but bursting with energy. The transition into, this wiser woman, this contentment, this fulfillment that this brings about. Oh, bring it on.
It's hard though, Abby. And I hear you, because we need to kind of shed the baggage so we can be just lighter and live a bit freer. But it's hard when that baggage is on you.
But Faye, do you not think that sorry to interrupt, darling, but that it's hard because you're trying to push it into a space that it's not fitting? And totally I always say to everyone, the way you're feeling, your environment will press that into you. And if it don't fit in the environment, if that's not going to support you, it's going to hurt. And this is, you know, for an example, I left London because it was starting to hurt. It was like everything was starting to pour out of me, and I actually had this download, which was, I'm going to become really unwell if I stay here. I could feel it. I could feel it. I was, you know, and like almost to like this early death situation. If I don't go, this is what's going to happen. I had to make a decision, and I had to push a bit on my environment to impress the importance of it. But eventually, everything came together, and we're here. And from moving here, I finally appreciate what a stressed out maniac I was. You know, I had it all together. Woo! But underneath my skin, I was like, yeah! That was the constant like communication. I sit here now, and you know, this morning I sat looking at my window for about half an hour before the kids go. I started to draw. You know, it's all these things that make me, that I enjoy.